What's up, everyone? Lord Ryujin here again, bringing you another edition of the Retro Gamers Den. Since this week is Halloween and it's the trick-or-treating season, I've decided to come out with a list of my top 5 favorite survival horror games for this year. Next year there will be a whole new batch of survival horror games, and the list may be different, and I might do it again next year. But for this year, I'm using the following criteria. It has to be a game that I have actually played. I'm not going based upon other people's opinions on this, and I'm not going based upon reviews or anything like that. I'm going strictly based upon my experiences with playing the game, holding the controller, and, all that. I'm also judging it based upon, again, my experience with the game. What kind of atmosphere did it present? What kind of presentation did I get out of it? That kind of stuff. And lastly, I'm only going to list one game in the series. So none of this whole, listing 2 or 3 games from a single series. If there have been multiple games that I've played that I've liked, that's great. If there's only been typically it has to be more than 1 or 2 that I've played. But as long as the series as a whole has entertained me and has given me that experience that I've expected from it, then it's going to be listed in this. And so with that, let's move on into our actual top 5. But real quick before we do, I want to give an honorable mention to Nightmare Creatures. The series is no longer around, and Callisto has since gone out of business, and I believe Ubisoft has bought the series but hasn't done anything with it yet. So it's kind of sad, at least to me, that we're not going to get a 3rd game in the series, but I really have enjoyed what Nightmare Creatures and Nightmare Creatures 2 brought to the table, and they are 2 games that I still enjoy going back and playing, especially Nightmare Creatures 2 on my Dreamcast. Love playing that. But with that, we're going to move forward into our list. Now, number 5 is a game that I'm sure that I'm going to get some disagreements on and probably some gripe about. But again, this is my personal preference. Number 5 is ZombiU for the Wii U. The game had an amazing presentation, at least I thought, especially for a launch title game. Graphically, wasn't that great, and I understand that. But I do like the premise of you could never really die. Even if you lost as a survivor, you became another survivor and you continued on. You could go back and get your loot that you got from your previous character, or you can just continue to move forward. I also love the fact that just like in a real-world game, it's essentially open-ended. I can go anywhere that I want at any time. I don't have to follow a linear path. Even though there is a direct path to take and a direct objective that you have to do, I could go back to someplace earlier and look for more loot, or go to a path that I was originally going to take and take that way instead. And especially when you get into a new area and they don't give you a map, you can really explore for a long time. I also like the presentation that the game gave me with the backpack, and the fact that you have to be in a safe spot in order to equip things and move things around. It's really like how it would be in the real world. You couldn't just pause a real zombie apocalypse. You'd really have to make sure that you're in a safe spot and make sure that you have enough ammo and food with you to last, because you never know what you're going to encounter in the field. I like that strategic part of it. I also like what it did with the Wii U gamepad, and I like the overall ambience of the game and the overall atmosphere that it presented, and that is what makes it a qualifier for this list. Now, number 4 on the list is a game that or a game series that you probably would have expected to be on here, and that is Resident Evil. Especially with the first few games in the series, I know that later on it became more action than anything. But with games like Resident Evil Revelations, they've proven that they can have some survival horror elements to it. And Resident Evil was my entry into the series. And of games like Resident Evil Zero that I hold in such high regard that I would play them over and over again, this game series definitely deserves a spot on this list. I always have high regards for Resident Evil games. I've always enjoyed playing them, and every time they announce another one, I'm usually always looking forward to it. Now, number 3 on the list is one that you probably would have expected, and that is Dead Space. Dead Space has a certain ambience about it. especially the first game, because you didn't really know what to expect, and it has such tight corridors that sometimes it made things really difficult. And I like how in the second game it became a little bit more open and challenging, but yet you still had these jump out moments where you're not really expecting certain things to happen. You know, Dead Space is definitely on this list simply because, again, of the whole presentation factor. The fact is you have to learn to be careful with your ammo. You can't just, and sometimes ammo is scarce in the game. Things like that really make Dead Space worth it, Number 2 on the list is another one that kind of has more of a cult following. It isn't really that popular, but to me, number 2 has got to be the Fatal Frame series. Now, Nintendo has recently taken the helm with the Fatal Frame series, so I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with future iterations. I know that Spirit Camera on the 3DS really looked like it was going to be very promising, and I've yet to play it, but I'm soon about to get my hands on it, I'm sure. But just playing games like the Crimson Butterfly, Fatal Frame 2 and all that, really using the Camera Obscura as a weapon, you can't really fight the ghost any other way. It was really, really good. It did have some weird moments because it's not really a Western game, so it has a lot of Japanese culture references and things like that. But otherwise, I think that Fatal Frame is really, really good and does have some really good creepy moments to it. And now, number 1 on my list. Number 1 on my list is, of course, Silent Hill. If you did not see that coming, well, maybe you just don't know me all that well. I don't know. But Silent Hill was the game that got me into horror in the first place. I mean, I was playing Resident Evil 2 because everybody else was playing Resident Evil 2. Do you see what I'm saying? But Silent Hill, I was like, screw Resident Evil, man. Silent Hill is creepy. Okay? It was the game that made me switch over to PlayStation, really. Because, I was playing Resident Evil 2 on my Nintendo 64. So, when I was walking around in the fog and you had those creepy headless kids coming at me and the speaker going off that's, oh, they're getting close, but I can't see. It was creepy. It was a game that really creeped me out, and very few horror games have been able to do that. Yeah, I'm sure I've kind of understood, this is supposed to be scary, but I'm not really scared, This was one of the very first games that really did that really made me kind of a little bit nervous and a little unsettled about it. I'm just like, oh, okay, I have to be patient with this. I can't just go rushing in. And that's what makes it number 1, is because of things like that and Silent Hill 2. And the fact is the game rewards you based upon how you play. There's not a linear ending. There is an ending based upon how you play the game. And that is just awesome. And it stands head and shoulders above the others because of that. And because of the presentation that it brings. And the fact is, hey, Silent Hill is just basically purgatory. It's your punishment. And so Silent Hill can really be anything. This isn't like we have to set up a whole new town or a whole new setting. It could be the same place every time with a different person and literally be a different town every time. It's just got some great presentation to it. And I know that the series has gone downhill recently because Team Silent isn't making it anymore. But just the PlayStation 2 era games alone, there you go. But that's my list, guys. Make sure that you list any of your favorites in the comments below. Thank you for listening. And make sure that you follow us on our Blogger account, which I'll list in the description below. Make sure that you leave suggestions for future editions. You never know what might be used, and I'll give you a shout out and I'll link to your channel if you do. But otherwise, guys, again, thanks for listening. Have a happy Halloween. Safe holidays to all of you. I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.